Hello everybody, I'm Derek De La Paz and I'm one of the roasting education coordinators here at Mill City Roasters in Northeast Minneapolis, and we are all lucky today. We are going to actually get a chance to roast some coffee from Yemen. How exciting is that? I know, I'm super excited. So we will be roasting a lovely Red Haraaz Yemen from one specific farmer in Yemen. So this is a very special coffee in the fact that when coffee was originally taken from northern Ethiopia and southern Sudan to be grown, the first place it was taken to be grown in the world was actually Yemen. So Yemen was the first place where they actually grew coffee for consumption. So it's pretty amazing that we have a green coffee that comes from an area, a place in the world where they started the growth of coffee. And they started the whole trend of coffee that became where we live today. So all of us coffee professionals in the industry, I think we all owe a little bit to the Yemeni coffee farmers that started this whole ordeal off. So it's super exciting to have this coffee. This coffee is very rare, it's very special, it's not cheap. So we're gonna actually roast some small batches of this coffee, and we're actually gonna feature the 500-gram roaster, which is right to my side, that we're gonna roast on it. So we're gonna kind of do two things today. We're gonna focus on roasting the Yemen, but I'm also gonna talk through a little bit about the 500-gram roaster. So that's kind of an exciting thing too. So the 500-gram roaster is great. You know what I mean? Not only can you do sample roasts on it, if you're into sample roasting or you work in a coffee lab or you're a consumer or a roaster producer that actually wants to do sample roasting and production roasting, but it also is a small enough roaster to where you could pop it into your garage, you could probably put it in your kitchen if you have a very nice large home, or you could put it into a small roastery as a second roaster. So the 500-gram roaster has a lot of bells and whistles. It has all the standard Mill City bells and whistles. It has 2 thermocouples plus the bean temperature. We have complete control of airflow, of drum speed, of gas. So we have all the controls that we want for roasting. It's got a great double wall drum. We have thermal plate steel throughout the whole machine, so it's a quite heavy machine. We've now on the newer 500-gram, we actually duct the cooling tray too, so the cooling tray is being ducted like all of our machines. So it's finally time for the 500 to join the rest of the family as far as being a ducted cooling tray. So you have super efficient cooling. It's also like a nice little footprint. It's one of our tabletop roasters, so it actually goes on a table, you know, cyclone included, hangs off the backside over here. So that's all really helpful stuff. Basically, I've been warming up the machine for about 20 minutes, and we're ready to go. So I'm just gonna basically turn off the warm-up cycle so that the machine can come down in temp, and then I'm gonna talk through what we're gonna do with this Yemen. This Yemen is a really lovely coffee. It's a natural processed coffee, but from my understanding, Cafe Imports, who we source this coffee from, has changed the process a little bit in Yemen about how they source their coffees. And so they've actually requested the gentleman that takes the cherries to accept red ripe cherry instead of dried cherry, which is the traditional way they do it in Yemen. So this year's crop is actually a little different than last year's. We got some last year's too, and it's a little bit more, to be really honest, it seems like a little bit more washed. It has a brighter acidity, and it has a cleanliness of cup that I've rarely, if ever, tasted in a natural. So I'm gonna be honest and say I chose this coffee because I think it's amazing. It's amazing because it has those qualities. It's got the floral nuance of the greatest Ethiopians I've ever tasted, but then the same token, it's got wininess that you would expect maybe in like an El Salvadorian honey processed pacamara or some Costa Rican honey processed, but then it also has red berry ripe fruit notes like you'd expect in a traditional, natural, high quality Ethiopian. So really, when I think about it in the context of cups and quality of bean, it almost has all the qualities of the greatest coffees that I've ever had in my life. I'm not trying to sell the coffee. I just get really passionate about coffees and things that I'm enjoying. And so for me, this coffee touches a place inside of me that is just really special because it has so many qualities. It has complexity, it has cleanliness, it has acidity, it has brightness, it has fruit, it's got nuance, it's got floral, it's got it all. So basically it's a coffee that you can spend your lifetime roasting and still not master it. So we're definitely not gonna master any roast today, but we're definitely gonna knock out a few roasts. So I'm gonna do a traditional light roast to start, kind of on the lighter side of light, you know, pushing that limit of light because this coffee has so much nuance. And then for the second roast, I'm gonna do a more developed roast. I'm not gonna go into second or anything like that. This coffee is far too delicate, in my opinion, to go into second, but we're gonna definitely go through first and let first end and probably go a little bit farther. So we're probably looking at something like 22% development phase for the first roast and probably something more like a 25% development phase in the second roast. I'm probably gonna extend the second roast overall time too. I'm gonna put a little more value and sweetness in the second roast So I'm gonna try and develop the sweetness a little more in the body. I think that will really help in like a standard brew method. But for the first roast, I'm gonna really accentuate the nuance, the acidity, the brightness, the cleanliness of cup. So something that'll be really nice for like a pour over, I wanna say. All right, well, I'm gonna turn off the warm up cycle and we're gonna get ready to roast. So I do have Artisan set up on my computer that I'm running in the background, but for most of this roast, I'm just gonna be right at the machine, and I'm gonna do it the way I originally learned, where you pay attention to time, temperature, you use the trier, you use the sight glass, and I'm actually gonna be recording most of my notes on one of our bags that we have that will hold a 1 pound roast, because we're gonna do a 500 gram 1 pound roast, roughly. I know that's a little different, but I'm just gonna say that. And we have bags that are specifically for that size of a roast, and they have a spot on the front of the bag to actually put your roast data. So I'm gonna record all my roast data on the bag. I have Artisan running in the background so I can keep track of my current rate of rise. That's pretty much what I'm gonna use that for, but most of the time I'm gonna spend on the machine right now. I'm looking for a 375 charge, and we're gonna use, like I said, a 500 gram charge weight. All right, we're coming right down to it, so I better get going. Looks like we might be a little bit behind on this one, but that's okay. That's roasting. All right, so I loaded up my charge, pre-weighed. Oop, we're down to 370, so I'm gonna go a little bit lower than I predicted. I'm gonna probably do more like 368 for our charge. All right, and there we go. I did 365 actually. All right, so I did a 365 charge on this one. I started my timer on Artisan. I'm gonna use the Artisan timer mostly because I missed the timer on the machine. Sorry about that. All right, so with this coffee, I planned to do about a 30-second soak. If you guys aren't familiar with the term soak, it's kind of one of the new terms that's being knocked around in roasting. And it's basically just allowing the beans to absorb the energy that the drum and the machine's holding before you actually apply heat or apply flame. All right, so we're there. So now I just turned on the flame. So now I heard ignition right away, and I'm hitting it roughly with about, generally on this machine, it's a little bit below 50% of maximum fuel. So I think I'd probably be at like 44% maximum fuel is roughly what I'm applying to the coffee right now. And I'm doing a full charge in here. So full charge, we're doing about 45% fuel. My goals for this roast, I wrote a few notes just so I wouldn't sound stupid. I'm basically gonna look like for about a 30-second soak, which we did that. I'm gonna look for my green to yellow transition, roughly between 4 and 4:30. My Maillard, I'm gonna try and slow down the development through the Maillard phase a little bit, or slow down the rate of rise a little bit. So I wanna hit first around 8 minutes. I'm basically gonna finish this roast roughly around 10 minutes, hopefully around 400 degrees. That's the overall kind of template or game plan skeleton that I want to kind of build around for this roast. We'll see how it goes. Obviously my 375 charge was a little below. I did 365 on the charge. So we're just gonna see how that goes. But I need to get back to the machine a little bit and see where we're at. All right, so we're at about minute 35. Just so you know too, my drum speed, I set up my drum speed to be about 52 to 53 RPM. So I'm using a 53, we'll say 53 RPM drum speed on the machine. And I counted my drum speed too. I always double check and count the drum rotations to know official drum speed. I'm also going to be using a low, medium, high type of airflow adjustments. I basically have my airflow set low to start the roast at charge. And then green to yellow transition, I'll bring the airflow up a little bit, which I would consider medium for me. And then basically right around first crack, pre-first crack, right around crack, depending on how my rate of rise is basically moving at that point, I'll bring up the airflow again another time. And that would be what I would consider a high airflow. And I don't mean high airflow in the context of the greater world of roasting. It's actually probably more like medium airflow in there. But for me, it's the higher airflow setting that I use in my roasts. All right, so now we're about 2:30. So we're starting to creep up on maybe green to yellow transition. The coffee's definitely brightening up. So we have a little brighter green color. So that's telling me it is transitioning. Roughly on my temperature, I have about 263. On the 500 gram machines, we're probably gonna see a green to yellow transition around 320 to 330, depending on the green, depending on the application of heat, airflow, things like that. So I have my airflow set to low, just like I said earlier. One thing that I should cover really quickly, depending on how high you charge your roaster, that will affect how low your turning point is, which will then basically create a gradient of how much temperature you'll go from your turning point to your green to yellow. If you only have about 60 degrees to go from turning point to green to yellow, then your rate of rise is gonna be dictated by that. If you have 120 degrees to go from turning point to green to yellow, then your rate of rise through drying phase is going to be dictated by that. So don't think that your roast is off spec because your initial rate of rise is so low. You might just be charging a lot higher. So it's not all about the profile, it's more about the cup. So just know that. And when I'm on the 500, I tend to roast a little bit more artisan style with the cup and a little less breaking down all the specifics, live data coming off my IT, my ET, and my rate of rise. I like to spend a little more time with the machine. But obviously we're spending time together, so that would probably be the time that I would spend on the artisan instead of with the machine. All right, we're looking like we're getting right up on green to yellow. This is looking super nice, 356, uh-oh. Okay, we'll call it. So I always like to back up the color with a smell. So I tend to like, I kind of call it muffin, because I don't think of it as bready as much, because I think of bready as being yeasty. Okay, it's about right there. This is a very sweet coffee too, full of aromatics. Okay, we're looking good, 322 at roughly. I think I'm gonna call it right there. So we're gonna call green to yellow transition 426 at 326. I'm gonna record that really quick on my artisan, and now I'm gonna lower the fuel by a little bit. Just a little bit. So I roughly brought the fuel down by about, so now we're down to about 30%, 33% of overall fuel, I wanna say, roughly, generally right now. I brought it down by about, I don't know, I'm terrible at math, so maybe 20% of what I was initially using. So I basically just want to slow down the rate of rise right now. I just want to slow down the process. This is a pretty dense bean, but they're small, so they don't need a lot. They don't need a ton of like slowing, I want to say, so you can allow that energy to get into the center of the bean. That's one of the problems. If you roast too quickly, then you're going to basically over roast the exterior and leave the inside raw, and that's going to be an astringent, vegetal, undeveloped cup that not many people are going to enjoy. So I'm slowing down the roast a little bit in my yard because I really want to give the energy time to get into that core of the bean so I can get good development, good sweetness in my cup, get rid of some of those astringent vegetal qualities, but at the same token, not burn the outside. So I've slowed my rate of rise down quite a bit. This is really nice. Now I'm just going to progress through my yard. Like I said, we want to hit crack probably around 8 minutes. I have a feeling we're going to hit it a little bit quicker, so I might just slow down my fuel input a little bit more. So now I'm down to about 25% overall fuel for the machine. So 25% fuel, I'm slowing it down. This little machine actually is a little bit more like a sports car for me. So any little adjustment you make, it's a little quicker to show up on your roasts than a bigger machine, and it has a greater impact on the overall roast. So you can do a lot of like micro adjustments on the 500 and really manage the profile well. You can also do a few less adjustments and your profile might not look as good on artisan, but you're still gonna create a really nice cup. I tend to do less fuel adjustments, so for me, the 500 gram kind of pushes me to be a better roaster and to pay a little more attention, which is kind of hard actually when you're doing a video. Oop, I think that was an outlier. Okay, I'm gonna bring my fuel down again. I'm actually gonna bring my airflow up too. I think I missed my green to yellow transition airflow adjustment if you guys are watching at home. So I'm gonna bring that up a little bit. So I'm gonna do my green to yellow airflow adjustment. I did a little late, quite late actually. I'm not going to call that as crack yet because I like to hear 3 together. I'm hearing these kind of outlier pops. And we are coming into it a little early. Oop, I think I'm going to call it right there. All right, so I'm going to call first crack right there. And that was 653 at 387. All right. So now I'm going to lower my fuel. I'm lowering my fuel to roughly around 10% of overall max fuel. So it's pretty low, because I'm just really trying to let this roast like somewhat glide, roll. I don't know a proper term for that. I'm gonna say, but I'm trying to like let the momentum just slowly run out of it and run it right down to our final temp. I don't want to pull away too much energy though, because then you can just crash your roast, and then you're gonna have to apply more energy to get that temperature back up to get to your final temp, and that's probably gonna create some negative cup qualities when you eventually get to the cupping table. 742, yep, our rate of rise is coming down quite a bit. I'm gonna bring the fuel up just by a smidge because I don't want to completely lose the roast. I just want to slow it down and really extend that development phase. Roughly right now, we're probably around 13% development, so we're doing really good. We're gonna be a little shorter than my goal. I think my goal for this roast was right around 10 minutes. We're probably gonna be more in the 9-minute range, to be honest. We're at 8 minutes now. We're roughly at 395, so we're still progressing quite nicely. I'm gonna bring my airflow up just by a little bit, just because I don't want this energy, because I just brought the fuel up a little bit, and I'm really trying to manage the development phase, and I don't want too much energy to be inputted to the beans so that my development phase gets a little out of control. So sometimes I'll use airflow to take some energy away in little incremental amounts. Initially, you might see a slight increase in rate of rise, very slight, and then it's initially going to bring it down a little bit. I'm okay with that. Not all roasters are, and I understand that every roaster's got a little different perspective on how to get the best cup. I always like to refer to the cupping table as success, never on the machine, but every roaster's got their own way, and in no way am I saying that anyone's wrong. This is just the way that I do it. All right, so now my rate of rise is coming back up. Nothing where I would be scared, but it's a little bit up, so I'm just gonna turn off the fuel right now, and we're just gonna let this ride. So I just killed the fuel. We're roughly at 400 degrees, but I just wanna get a little more development out of this. Let's just get on the tryer too and see where we're at. So I'm gonna turn the cooling tray on. So the cooling tray's on, so we can drop this when we're ready. We're roughly at our development spot. This is really good. I like the color. It could use a little stretching, but this is a light roast, so it's gonna be not super stretched. Okay, we're gonna call that. All right, so roughly it was 920 to 402. There's still a little chaff on the beans. There's definitely a little, the skin isn't super smooth. It's definitely a light roast. The beans are little and it's a natural. So it's gonna look a little darker on the exterior than it really is. So it's gonna almost seem like it roasted a little faster than you might have thought. So I can tell by the stretching of the bean that it didn't roast super dark, but the beans themselves look a little darker in color because of the natural processing on the beans. I think this roast is gonna be really solid. I probably would let this rest from 3 to 5 days. Basically before I'd want to like really critique the cup. You could cup it tomorrow for sure to see how you did, but it's really going to brew out best between 3 to 5 days rest. All right, well I'm going to set up the machine for the second roast here. So I'm going to take a couple minutes and get away and reset the machine up, but we'll be back in a bit to do that second roast. Thanks a lot. All right, everybody, so we're back at the machine. I've cleaned out the previous roast, the light roast, and now I'm warming the machine back up. As soon as this machine hits its temperature, I'm actually going to turn it off. And then we're gonna let it come down and we're gonna get ready to charge our second roast. So this time I'm actually gonna pay a little bit more attention to the machine and we're actually gonna do a 375 charge. So once again, I have the 500 gram charge weight ready for the machine. We're gonna do a 375 charge. I'm gonna run through quickly what I'm gonna try and do with this roast for you guys, because I wrote some notes so I wouldn't sound stupid. Okay, there it goes. So we just hit the high temp reading. So with this one, instead of what we did the last time, I'm actually gonna do a 1 minute soak instead of a 30-second soak. I just wanna slow the roast down a little bit. My green to yellow transition, I'm gonna try and extend out to 5 minutes, 5 to 5:30. I'm gonna basically look to slow down my Maillard reaction, very similar, slow the Maillard reaction down, maybe a little more. I'm looking to hit first crack around 9 minutes. If I can even go farther than that, I'm okay with that. We're roughly gonna go to around 11-ish total time for the roast. And I'm thinking 410 plus. We'll just see where we're at and how much momentum we have and how the development goes. I just want to get more stretching on the bean. I want to take it to more of a medium level. I'm not going to go full on medium dark, but I want to get more sweetness. I want the cup to be a little bit more sided in sweetness. Okay, we're coming down to our temp. And this time we might actually be able to do it. We're selling this Yemen in 1 pound bags too, if you're interested. That's what we're seeing here. And of course, I just missed it again. So we're just going to charge it right here. There we go. Timer set. I had the Artisan running in the background, and it's mostly just so I can keep track of the live rate of rise. I'm not doing a ton of, I don't put a ton of weight into my profile lines. Definitely they're important. Definitely I'm gonna refer them. I'm definitely gonna bring the profiles over to the cupping table. So when I cup, I'm gonna bring the profiles over there. After I cup and I make decisions about what cups I like, how things worked, what things didn't work, how I'm developing different cups, then I'll really refer to my roast profiles and try and figure out what was different about each roast that then created that cup. So that's where I'm really gonna put heavy weight on the roast profile and the roast rate of rise lines and things like that. But when I'm on the machine, I'm not gonna use that as the deciding factor about how I'm doing with this roast. I'm gonna be a little bit more intuitive with the green, with the phase events, with heat application and airflow. Okay, so minute soak we were saying, we're right about at that point. I already have my fuel setting set, so I know my initial fuel setting. Bam, 1 minute, we just hit it. So roughly with this one, I'm starting off with 33% fuel. So on the previous roast, I think I did 44% max fuel. This time I'm starting off with 33% max fuel. The overall would be 100% fuel on your machine. So I'm roughly using 33% of what the max fuel would be on your machine. on this machine. Your machine might be a little different, things like that. I like to talk percentages of max so that we can maybe translate that to how we roast in our facility. Because if I gave you kPa or inches of water, you're gonna have a different machine with different inches of water, different gas regulators, all that stuff, and it's not gonna be super applicable. Not that this is completely applicable, but it's more applicable than inches or kPa. All right, so now we're looking basically at the first phase event, green to yellow transition. We're thinking that that's gonna happen, you know, we're trying to extend it. So I'd be okay with it happening more in the 5-minute range. And really why I'm extending this roast opposed to the previous roast is I really want this roast to just be a little sweeter. I want the body to be more developed, and I want there to be a little bit more sweetness. I want the cup to be very balanced. This cup has high acid. It also has a lot of nuance. And it also is quite sweet. So I'm gonna really try and bring all those parameters into what would be perfect balance. Am I gonna do that right here on this roast? I'm gonna say not, but I'm gonna attempt to do that on this roast. Then I'm gonna bring it to the cupping table, and I'm gonna do what I said earlier. I'm gonna compare cups to cups. I'm gonna look at my roast profiles, what I did, what I didn't do, and that's gonna help me figure out how tomorrow I would get closer to that perfect cup. I'm gonna say you give me 3 days and unlimited greens and my ability to cup, and I'm gonna probably get that roast almost to where I think that perfect sweet spot medium roast would be for this coffee in about 3 days, or in about 3 sessions, I should say. That's just my own personal thing. And that goes back to before I was a coffee roaster, the 3 thing. All right, so we're at 250, 248. So that's looking good, I think. I think we're still moving a little quick, so I wouldn't be surprised if we hit green to yellow around 4.5 to 5, but hopefully we'll go 5 beyond. Definitely, I've got a less rate of rise this time. Overall, my peak rate of rise is much lower on this roast, and I'm already coming down my rate of rise quite a bit. So that initial fuel setting that's what's doing that. So your initial fuel setting for me is the first difficult decision to make in any roast profile. That initial fuel setting, how much energy do you apply and when do you apply it? That to me is the first really hard moment in a roast. The second most hard moment, that's terrible language, I know, I'm terrible at grammar, but for me, the second hard decision in a roast is pre-crack manipulation of energy too. When do you lower the fuel pre-crack to have control through development? Those are the 2 parts for me that I get a little bit nervous and stressed out around. So it's always nice to have a plan in the beginning. I like to plan out all my roasts before I get on the machine. Not necessarily the skeletal thing like I told you about my phase events, timing and things like that, but kind of what I want in the overall cup. I start with what I want in the overall cup, and then I build a skeletal framework of a roast profile around how I would execute that in my general sense of coffee. And then I get on the machine, and that's where I start. I start with my parameters, with my overall cup, and I try and guide my coffees to that. And then obviously, like I said, we're gonna cup on the cupping table tomorrow. We're gonna look at our roast profiles. We're gonna look at our inputs. And from there, we're gonna hone down on what we want in this coffee and how we're gonna roast it. Okay, looking good, people. 430, and we're at 293. Might be moving a little too slow. Wow. All right, I'm gonna ride it out though, you know? There was a really bad Paul Dreyfus movie, I think that was maybe what it was called. I'm not sure. So we're gonna let it ride. And no knock on Paul Dreyfus. But he is kind of a poor man's Paul Newman, right? I don't know, maybe, sorry. All right, people, it's looking really good. I like this. Now, once again, I like to do my low, medium, higher, I should say, or lower, higher, highest airflow adjustments. I start with my lowest airflow adjustment basically at charge, and then at green to yellow transition, I increase the airflow. So I think I'm getting close to that, and last time I missed it, and this time I'm gonna try and catch it. Ooh, we're looking really solid. I'm gonna get on the trier. I apologize, I'm not nearly as interactive with the trier and the machine as I'm doing video, and so I'm trying to give you guys a connection and connect with you at the same time I'm trying to do this. So really, I'm like, my mind is like in 2 places right now. It's with you and it's with the machine. It's a little challenging, if you haven't noticed. Ooh, looking good, looking good. And my computer went off. 320, 541, 320 for green to yellow. I love it. All right, so we're looking like we're seriously on track. And I think that last time I lowered the fuel, I think somewhere between green to yellow and crack. I did like a mid roast fuel adjustment when I saw the rate of rise was too high, or maybe it was right away. But this time I'm gonna let the fuel ride. So I'm leaving the fuel where it's at, 'cause I think we have a nice amount of momentum, and it's a very consistent roast with the way it's going. And I just increased the airflow, so that initially it might bring the roast temperature up a little bit, but eventually it's gonna bring away some of that energy. So I'm just gonna ride out my fuel setting right now. And so we're looking for like around a 9-minute first crack, which I think last time happened at 387. So we're at 333. So we're actually going pretty slow here. But to be honest, I like where I'm at. I'm gonna let this ride out a little bit. And if we go a little long on this roast, that would be kind of awesome. Not really because I'm making a mistake from my overall goal, but so you at home can see the way the best plans are laid out. They don't always work out that way. Like coffee is a real-time event. Like we're doing it real. So I'm talking to you at the same time this coffee's roasting back here, and any moment I can make a mistake and miss a parameter or miss something that would help me guide this roast to a better place. So that's why roasting is such a unique, fun, I want to say, culinary experience, culinary science, because it's happening real and it's live. So you can never gain the knowledge of a roaster without just roasting and being present. So being with your machine, with your coffee, that's an amazing honor. So be present, learn as much as you can off the littlest things, just using the tryer, smelling off the tryer. You're gonna learn a ton off of just aromas, the way aromas and fragrances develop. One of those is wrong, I know, because you have to add wet to it. So the way the smells develop as you roast. That's a really important thing to learn just in the beginning, which I should be using the tryer a little more. It's nice. I definitely getting some sugar browning smells. Sugar browning smells. There's definitely a lot of kind of like baked items in there. Not like baked like bad coffee baked, more like cinnamon buns or something like that. Monkey bread. Queen Amman, that's for you. My favorite customer. We kind of have an ongoing joke about a special pastry in the Twin Cities. Okay, look at this, I love it. My rate of rise is actually continuing to come down a little bit, but ever so slowly. I'm really liking this roast. This might be one where I just take it all home and I don't share it with anyone here in Mill City. That happens once in a while. But since this is on video, they're probably gonna ask to try it. Okay, this is great. Oh yes, we're progressing quite nicely. I like it. I think I might bring my fuel up right now. We're probably like still a minute from first crack, but I'm gonna bring my fuel up right now, maybe even a little bit more than that. I'm gonna bring my airflow up right now because I just wanna bring the rate of rise down a little bit. And I know initially that could bring the rate of rise up a little bit, but that's just gonna be a really quick change and then it's gonna start bringing it down. And once you start to have your rate of rise moving in a certain direction, you have to make a decision on how to change direction, one way or the other, either by lowering your fuel or by increasing your air. So I'm gonna increase my air and keep my fuel where it's at. Oh, we're hearing some outliers right there. So it looks like we are gonna be a little long in our development, or I mean in our roast. Oop. No, those are good. We're gonna call that right there. Okay, so that's first crack. We're saying at 925, 389. Okay, so I did see an initial jump in my rate of rise by a couple degrees per minute. Not much, nothing that's gonna freak me out, but now it's starting to come down. So now I probably should make a second fuel or a third fuel adjustment to really let this roast coast down to its finish temp, but I don't wanna lose too much momentum right now because we're going a little darker. So I'm gonna keep the momentum up a little bit. So right now we're looking at about 14 ROR, which is really nice because we still wanna go a distance with this roast. We're at 397, we're going to 410, so we don't want to completely kill the roast and bring it down to like a 3 or 4 ROR, or then we'll overextend our development phase, which might be great for this coffee, but I'm thinking in my gut that that's not a great thing, especially seeing that the roast is overall longer. All right, so we're roughly at 1015, 400. This is looking super great. Our rate of rise is 12, so we have this really gentle downward spike or downward trend of the rate of rise. And it's continuing to go downward. So we're about ready to hit 10 rate of rise, and that's really solid. 1031, 403, so we don't want to completely lose this roast, and it is slowing down a little bit. So this is the part where it's really a delicate situation. Oh, definitely getting some nice stretching. Overall color is about where it was last roast. You know, it's a little bit darker, but not much. So we're probably gonna go to more like 412 if we don't lose all of our momentum in this roast. Sometimes you have to make a decision. All right, I'm gonna lower my fuel again there. I just don't want my rate of rise to increase at this point. I want it to just keep going downward. And after a certain point, the coffee will actually start to dry out quite a bit and it will go up on its own if you don't lower the fuel. Okay, now we're at 412, so we're getting good development on the coffee. Ooh, I just want to stretch it a little bit. So I think I'm gonna go to 415. That's gonna be the number right there. I'm gonna use 415 as my number, and that's a wrap. 1124 to 415. Oh yeah. So this bean is definitely a little more developed. It doesn't look much darker. Like I said, the naturals will tend to roast a little darker, a little faster, just because of the sugars on the exterior of the bean, because of the processing method. But this roast doesn't look much darker overall in color. The biggest difference is the beans are slightly larger and they're much smoother of surface. So they've stretched out a little bit, and that tells me that we got a little more development out of that roast, which is exactly what we were going for. We were going for more of a medium development coffee. So this is really great. So roughly we had 1120, I want to say. 1120 to 412 was that roast. All right. Well, hopefully we'll put together a quick cupping video where we'll cup these two coffees and you guys can see how I did, because it doesn't always work out. Sometimes you have to just take the hard line and basically go to the cupping table and really honestly basically unveil or unwrap the mistakes you made. Sometimes you discover great things, sometimes you don't discover great things. We're all humans, we all make mistakes, even me. I've been roasting for quite a few years, but I still make roasts that are off spec. And that's just part of life, and you have to just learn from your mistakes and get stronger. So as a roaster, we're always kind of doing that. We're always kind of making mistakes, going back to the machine, going back to the table, getting stronger, getting better, and reapplying that knowledge. That's why roasting is such a great thing, because it always gives you another bite at the apple, as Steve might say. All right, everybody, have a great day. Checking out here from Northeast Minneapolis, Mill City Roasters. Spend some time with the 500 and this lovely Yemeni coffee. If you're interested in either one of those, we have multiple bags of the Yemeni available, and we have 500s that are being produced right now for you and your home. So hit us up here at millcityroasters.com, ask us questions, give us a call on the phone number. We're here for you. We're just trying to build this coffee community and make everyone better coffee professionals. Thanks a lot and have a good day. Bye.